Want to sound like you have a perm and wear spandex pants? Well, try these 5 tropes from the 80s. The 80s was a great time for guitar. You had all the hair metal going on, and everybody was trying to do that new histrionic lead and just showing off like crazy. It was also a good time for media. You had Snake Plissken, Bob Vila, Metal Yoda, and that was still playing D&D. But today we're going to talk about 5 tricks you can do on the guitar if you really want to get your 80s on. And the way I'm going to do it is I put together like this 1.5-minute tune. I'm just going to show you the piece of the tune where I use that trick or trope as I'm calling it. And I'll show you that piece, then show you what it's about and how to play it. And then when the whole video's over and I've showed you all 5 of them, I'll roll the whole tune so you can hear it in context. With that said, let's get on to trope number 1. Okay, so our first 80s trope here is the plucked dyad. And if you don't know what dyads are, it's just a fancy name for 2 notes. It's a 2-note chord harmony, if you will. And if you're going to do this in the 80s style, you can pick it. I can do like, grab my pick here, I can play stuff like, a real Dawkins sounding kind of thing. But to get very, very 80s with it, you got to do the pluck thing like I did in the example song. So I'll put the pick down. And first, you really need to understand some basic 2-note harmony, the major, minor chords, 4ths, 5ths, that kind of thing. So if I have like an A chord here, or an A major dyad, so I have an A and a C sharp. That's your basic do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, I've got an A in the bass note, I'm using my thumb, and then I'm using my first 2 fingers to pluck the other notes. So that's my major, A major. A minor is here. A and a C. I can use a 4th, A and D. I can use the 5th, A and E. I can go to a minor 6th, major 6th, then I have the diminished 5th. All these things are available depending on how you want to use them and how they fit into your key and what you're playing. So, it's a major one, I want to go minor. So there is a little bit of theory here or sussing things out as far as what key you're in and learning the positions of them. But the basic 80s trope in the lesson here is to do that pluck thing. Do that staccato, finger plucked, dyad part. Now let's go on to trope number 2. So trope number 2 is another rhythm playing trope, and it's a very simple one, but it's something that really has that distinct 80s quality, and that is to play a sus4 chord, or the one where you add your pinky. And this is based on the chords, not the chords, the full 6-string bar chord that you play, but rather the one based on the A string. And you're just adding your pinky to the chord. Let me show you here, right here. So if I'm playing an E chord and I've got the 7th, 9th, 9th, and then that other 9th, which can be hard when you're a beginner to hold, fret, you go into the 10th fret. Very Eddie Van Halen sounding Panama. And the reason it's called the sus4 is based on how you name chords with what you're using in harmonies. I have a whole lesson on that in harmonies. I'll link that up here. But very quickly for you, I'll explain that if you're playing, this E chord, if you're playing in the key of E, and if it's an E major, the 4th note in E major, so you have E, F sharp, G sharp, A. This note here is an octave of the A. And that's why they call it a sus4, 4 being the 4th note of the scale. So nothing complicated there. It's just to be aware of it kind of thing, and using that, using it gratuitously can make you sound really 80s. Now let's look at trope number 3. Trope number 3. Is there a lesson here? You just grab the bar and dive, and if you don't have a bar, well, you're just not 80s enough. Make sure it flubs. Okay, so this next trope is heavily dependent on equipment. You'll notice I switched to guitars, and that was because I needed a volume knob that I can easily reach with my pinky and that I could swell up or turn up very easily without much resistance because I'm just using my pinky here. The other thing that you need is a delay pedal, or I'm using an Axe effect, so I've programmed a delay that's set to a specific tempo for your song. So in this case, the song was at a tempo of 112, and I'm using dotted eighth notes as the delay on it. It kicks back a couple dotted eighth notes. And I need this because if it's not in time, you don't have the effect. And all I'm doing here is fretting notes with my left hand. So if I did it without the volume off, and I'm playing them with the swell. So I have to hit a note with a pick and raise my pinky up at the same time. In whatever tempo and whatever part you're playing, you have to really lock into it for it to work. And the other thing is, like nowadays, guys use a lot of noise gates because they use a lot of really heavy gain amps. And if your noise gate is working much at all, it makes it harder to do because you're barely getting any volume out of it. So you need it to react to a very low amount of output from the guitar as well. And, you know, I've gone this far in talking about it and completely forgot to mention the fact that it's Eddie Van Halen. It's Cathedral. That's the first place I heard it, and I think it might have been the first guy to do it. I don't know of anybody who did that before him. So if you haven't heard Cathedral already, you definitely want to check that out. That is a masterful way of doing it. Now let's go on to trope number 5, the bend and tap. The fifth and final 80s trope for today is the bend and tap, something that I saw Vito Bratta from White Lion do quite a bit, and he was kind of the first guy I noticed doing it, although I'm sure plenty of others did. And to do this particular trick, you have to know your scales linearly or up and down on a single string very well, and I've got a whole lesson, a Rutbuster lesson for that, which I'll link here. And the reason for that is because when you're bending a note, so if you know the string one way, say in this particular song, I was playing in the key of E minor. So on the G string, I have a G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, and so on, all the way up to the second octave. Now, if I bend a string, like in the tune, I bent from a G up to an A. Whatever I tap with over here, that note is pre-bent. So if I did something like play the B, I would end up tapping a note that's not in key because a whole note from B is a C sharp, which is not in this key, and it's not going to work unless you're trying to play some out of key notes, which, you know, they're cool sometimes, of course. So I had to think about, I tapped what would be a D, fretted D, but it's bent up a whole step to an E. So the whole trick is to know where you're at, of course, and then it's just bend the note, tap, and if you do it slow, it sounds like a dying cat. And then come down, and then I bent here, and went to the C, to the D. So the hardest part of getting this right is making sure that you're bending perfectly in key. It can be easy when you're just playing with vibrato and doing your normal thing. As soon as you go to tapping on a note, it suddenly becomes a little bit harder because you can't do those micro adjustments to make sure you're in key because you're focusing on getting the right hand into the right place. And if you're just a slight bit off, it sounds a little bit odd. So there's my top 5 quick 80s tropes to help you learn to play with that nostalgic sense. There are so many more, of course, and you know, maybe I could do another set of 5 if you guys think that's a cool idea. Please leave it in the comments below. And if you have any other questions or comments, let me know what you think. I always get back to everybody. And until next time, guys, keep making great music.